disconnection.
Up to the disconnection, yeah. At the right moment, Fabi just unplugs his Ethernet cord. All right.
We're stuck in a loop, guys. Every 2 games are going to look the exact same.
It's Groundhog Day. That's right. Satani Phil. Okay, so knight d2, same moves. Knight d5 is going to be played, I would imagine, at some... Oh, there's your move. The influence of Amon Hambleton immediately evident.
Must be. And if we don't see queen h3, I think queen h5 is a fantastic candidate move for white next.
Agreed, 100%, especially with the presence of the king on h7, exacerbating the issue.
Yep, queen h5, h4, knight d5, king g2. So many great moves at white's disposal here. And as long as f5 is not backed up by pawn on g6, meaning that if you took it, g takes f5, I don't think I like that for white. As long as f5, a piece recaptures, white's always going to keep getting that e4 square. And I'm just loving this opening for Wesley.
Yeah, king g2 always makes me a little antsy because, you know, I feel like there's always these knight f4, knight h4 tactics in some position. But obviously Wesley knows what he's doing.
Right.
And you mentioned h4. That is also quite typical in such positions, driving the pawn h5, getting rid of this knight so that there aren't any freak tactics on f4. But that's also a little dangerous. h4, f5, for example, takes. You might have to reckon with sacrifices on f4 or h4. You can see the Evolve are dropping. So Wesley has some decisions to make in this position.
And a theme or a motif that we've seen in the previous edition of this game is also that the bishop on e3 can be trapped. So sometimes with that open f file, you're playing knight f4 check, g takes f4, pawn takes f4, and the bishop might be trapped.
That's right. And Wesley is clearly worried about f5. This is a prophylactic move. He's got the rook in his crosshairs, and he's no longer got the rook in his crosshairs. And the battle is raging around who is going to... Is white going to prevent f5? Is black going to get f5 in? And if so, is it going to be in a good version?
Ah, see what you did there. If so.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
nice
that was totally unintentional. But let's pretend that it was totally intentional.
Your reputation precedes you.
That was so funny. Okay, knight c6. This queenside pressure is nothing to laugh about. b5. Where's the knight going to go? D4,
is it a snap take for you on d4, or do you keep the queen like queen h5?
Well, I guess it is, because after e takes d4, the only thing to worry about, I mean, you don't want to go knight e2 in these positions because of knight e5. But as long as you preserve the e2 square for the queen, I think white is totally in control here. And Fabi, I would consider going back to e7 with the knight and still aiming for f5. I don't know. I feel like knight b4, knight might get stuck there. It's like one of those, you know, prisons in Finland. I mean, it's not the worst accommodations, but you know, you might get trapped there.
There it is. Might spend more time there than you intended.
Right.
And the rest of the game is still going to develop around that knight. So white just has to deal with the pawn on d3, and even still, it might even be like knight d3, bishop h6 or something. So I'm not even sure if that's that dangerous.
Knight f4 there, and yeah, that's a cool idea. I feel like that's a theme of the matches, pieces being defended indirectly. We've had the situation before. But let's see if Wesley wants to just get this headache out of his mind with queen e2. Yes, he does. And Fabi does have an escape via c2 for the time being. But right now, the knight is pretty happy on b4, I think. And
we've seen an idea from Fabiano in the past. We may see it rear its head again with f5. And after the capture, there's going to be d5 coming with the knight on b4 supporting.
Free move.
Exactly. He definitely was ready for that.
What about maybe positional exchange sacrifice in Wesley style with rook takes b4? I actually really like rook takes b4.
That actually looks kind of fun.
That looks pretty good. But Wesley doing it a different way, he's getting his bishop to a3. That's a sick maneuver. And Fabi preparing to go d5 against it.
But isn't d5 kind of strong?
Yeah, and bishop takes b4, de, de. And guess what? Remember I mentioned the king makes me antsy?
Ooh.
Well, here you are. Knight f4 is a massive threat, and white loses the bishop. And I think Wesley overlooked that.
Yep. And I hope Fabi doesn't overlook it because he's got to play d5. I think he's calculating.
If he doesn't play d5, white takes, plays knight d5, and black can resign. So it better work.
But the thing is, even if it doesn't work, I think you still play it. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
You need to play d5.
You're in too deep.
Okay. So
Yep.
Wesley.
That's a sad necessity for white. And
it is.
We've seen this kind of position before.
Yeah, weak d3 pawn. And whenever you have to play f3, it's often a bad sign.
Yeah, Wesley feels that he needs to give a little bit more support to his knight. Fabi is now perfectly in control. Rook fd8. Maybe get the knight around to e6 and later to d4. Lots of options here.
I'm always impressed when a strong player can sort of dispel the illusions that I have about a position visually. Like Wesley's position has been looking so great every time he gets this position. I feel like Fabiano's just been outplaying him. Like he gets this f5, he gives up so many light squares, but he's clearly got the ideas for black in this position just drilled down to perfection.
Yeah, and I don't think our evaluation is necessarily wrong. I definitely think Wesley's better to begin with, but he's missing some of these tactical subtleties. And like I said earlier, Fabi has just been so sharp. C4, by the way, these types of positions has to be considered. I think C4 might have been very strong. C4,
right. Something like
C7,
C4, and then after Queen C7, Rook F7.
Yeah,
or Rook D7. Nice.
I think either move is. Oh, here maybe Knight D6. So Rook D7 picks off the bishop and leaves black with this extra pawn.
Yep. And one thing I'm looking at in this position in general is H4. And if the D3 pawn ever disappears, sometimes a pin against a knight on G6 to a king on H7 is one of the most annoying pins. You can never get out of it. You can't move your king. And it's completely stuck.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So this is also a theme, this pawn potentially disappearing, and who does that favor? C4 has to be calculated here as well. But Fabi going Queen F5 instead.
Playing Bishop B2 is a relief for Wesley.
Yeah, get that rook out of there. No more C4.
Speaking of C4, maybe Queen C4, Bishop C3. I feel like Wesley's pieces start to find harmonious squares. You can throw in A5 as well. There's just things to do for white now.
Yeah, there was a brief moment when I felt like Fabi was totally dominating, but Wesley has pushed back his pieces just a little bit, and he's earned himself some space and time. Queen E4 is another very classy move. The queen trade in this particular version is really bad for black. He loses the E pawn. Fabi is forced to make a weakening move. Now Wesley's better again for sure.
Definitely. And both sides kind of understand that, the mutual queen trades are bad. So they're just kind of staring at each other. But now he's actually threatening to win a pawn. So Bishop F6 was pretty much requisite.
Knight G4 looks pretty interesting here, although leaving the D3 pawn also comes with its risks.
Yep. Knight G4 I like. This move looks pretty promising.
It just seems right, but you could move the queen back to C4, and yeah, there's Knight G4. Yeah, this is the position I was having a hard time figuring out what to do. Maybe, you could, it takes on E5. Can Fabi take on D3 here? Probably not, but I'm not sure why.
There are going to be some... Wow. Yeah, there's a whole bunch to calculate there.
Yeah, we'll wait and see if he takes, and then we'll delve into the complications. Right now, Fabi is down to 30 seconds. You can sense the wheels turning in his brain. He's trying to figure out whether he can take on D3, and if so, when. Now, if he takes, then at the end of this line, that would be even worse. White's infiltrating to E7 with devastating effect. And Fabi realizing that is just at a loss for moves.
Yes, I think he almost had to take that. Here comes F4 though, or Rook E1.
Knight C6. Knight G6. Oh, that's a sick tactic.
Nasty.
And Fabi resigns.